We oftentimes hear people say, things cannot get any worse. The Job folktale shows otherwise. Job first lost his wealth. And if you'd gone to him and said things cannot get any worse, you'd have spoken too soon. Because then Job lost his children. And if you'd gone to Job and said, Job, things cannot get any worse, you'd gone too soon. Because then Job lost his health. 3 friends came from their respective homes to check on Job, because that's what friends do. Friends may not be able to change our situations, but as the saying goes, misery loves company. They were struck by how sickness and grief and poverty had taken its toll on Job. According to the story, even though they had known Job a while, when they first looked on him from far off, they couldn't recognize him. There have been moments when sometimes we have been unrecognizable to our friends because of what we've gone through. Sometimes sickness wrecks its toll on us and makes us unrecognizable. Sometimes grief wrecks its toll on us. If you ever doubt that, look at photographs of people when they're healthy and well and happy. And then look at photographs of them when they have been going through the troubles of life. And you can tell that the same person doesn't look the same. The friends joined Job in grieving. They tore their clothing and they threw dust in the air and put it on their heads, the Jewish signs of grieving, because they were sorrowful with Job. They were Job's companions in his suffering. And then they lovingly sat with Job in silence. Their ministry was simply being present. Sometimes the best thing we can do when others are suffering is to simply be present and hush. Be present and silent. We often read about the suffering of Job. We read in James about the patience of Job, the persistence of Job. But do we talk about Job's despair? Because if you'd said things cannot get any worse after Job lost his wealth and lost his children and lost his health, we would still have been too soon. Because as the texts we have read this morning show, Job sank even deeper. He sank into the depth, the well, may I say, the grave of despair. And in doing this work of presenting this story of Job, the Holy Spirit shows us that faithful people can, yes, faithful people can become despondent. Faithful people can become despondent. And notice something else. Job, in the depth of his despair, did something we say good folks shouldn't do. He cursed. I know we got religion that say good folks don't church, but notice something in your Bible. Job, who is called by God a righteous man, a man of integrity, cursed the day of his birth. That's going to mess up somebody's theology. That's going to mess up somebody's theology. But please remember, the same Job we read about as cursing in chapter 3 is the Job that God says is righteous and upright in chapter 1 and chapter 2. Job's character did not change. His conversation changed. And your conversation does change when your circumstances change. We don't talk the same way when our circumstances are high as we talk when our circumstances are low. And there is a reason for curse words because there's a reason for blessing words. You can't have blessings without cursing. In grammar, there is something called synonyms, things that mean the same thing. But there's another nym in grammar, isn't there? You know the grammar that means opposite things? You know what that word is? What is it now? Antonyms. Antonyms. You cannot have blessings without cursing. And Job, look at it. Chapter 3, verse 1. And Job, after this, after he had gone through loss of his wealth, after he'd gone through the loss of his children, after he'd gone through the loss of his health so bad that he could not find any comfort, miserable, scraping his body because of the sores on his body, unrecognizable to his friends, sitting in the sinkhole of his grief, after he'd gone through all that, after he had waited a whole week with his friends in silence as they sat Shiva, that Jewish term that means seven, Shiva, S-H-I-V-A. They sat Shiva with him for 7 days, mourning his situation. After that, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. Let the day perish in which I was born. The night that said a man-child is conceived, let that day be darkness. Job cursed. Yes. He said, why was I born? Look at verse 11. Why did I not die at birth? Why didn't I come out of the womb and just die? If I had to go through all this, why didn't I die sooner? Remember last week I said it ain't like you think it is? How often have we heard folks say, I look forward to going where the wicked will cease from wandering and the weary shall be at rest. Do you know where we got that word from? We get that word from Job's cursing time in chapter 3. Look at verse 17. There the wicked cease from troubling, and there the weary are at rest. He is talking about death. He's not talking about heaven. He's talking about the grave. Now, I know this messes up some of our theology because in the Joel Osteen School of Theology, everybody is always supposed to put on a happy face, you know. You know, the prosperity gospel through theology says you're supposed to be always happy, happy, happy. But Job didn't have a reason to put on a happy face. If Job had walked around with a cheese-eating grin on, somebody would say, Job, what's wrong with you? Hello? And that raises an interesting issue for us. What do we do with and around people who act like Job when we are supposed to be people of faith? See, Job shows that faithful people can become despondent. Job shows that faithful people can curse. Job shows that faithful people can vent their anger. Faithful people can get to the point that they not only question why they are suffering, they get so low they question the very reason they're alive. Yes, Job shows that despair can grip faithful people to the point and sink us so low that we damn the very notion of our birth. And when we reach that point, we need to be able to voice our despair. We need space to speak from the dark depths of our anger. We need people who will not try to hush us, who will not try to placate us with holy small talk, who will not try to drag us into conversations about how things will get better. Job didn't need some sanctimonious somebody saying, well, I know the Lord took your children, but they're better off now. Job didn't need some highfalutin preacher to come out. I know you lost all you had, but you're okay. Job was not okay. Job simply needed to be heard. And when we get to this kind of situation, and I said when, I didn't say if, I said when, because Job is us. You and I will get to situations where we will need to curse, and we don't need to have somebody saying, "Oh, I can't believe you said that." We need to have folks give us some cussing room. Deliver me from folks who don't give you cussing room. And I have gotten to the point where if you don't give me cussing room, I will cuss you out of the room. Because I need room. There are places in your life where you need some room to vent. And if folks going to keep you from bothering another, get them out of your room. Move them out of your room so you can have room to vent. You can have room to cry. You can have room to scream. You can have room to admit your frustration, your fear, your anger. Job had cussing room. Job had crying room. Job had despair room. Job had honest room. And he had friends who were smart enough for 7 days to keep their mouths shut. They were present, but they weren't in the way. According to the story, Job's friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, did that for 7 days. They took time to mourn with Job. They were engaged in something akin to the Jewish mourning practice known as sitting Shiva. As I mentioned, Shiva means 7 days. And they respected his pain. They joined in mourning for the loss he shared. Because faithful people, even when we can't do anything to change things, we can do something to be with people who are frustrated about the changelessness of their situation. There are times when troubled people need to be left alone. There are times when we need to leave people alone, but there are also times when we need to be with people and keep quiet around them, not because we know what to say, but because sometimes we can't say anything that will change anything. And sometimes the worst thing we can do is try to say something. I wish there had been people like Eliphaz and Zophar and Bildad around when Michael Brown Jr. was shot down by Darren Wilson in Ferguson, Missouri on the 9th of August of 2014. When Trayvon Martin was shot down in Florida, I wish there had been people like Eliphaz and Zophar and Bildad. I wish there had been people around like Eliphaz and Bildad and Zophar when a gunman killed those people in Charleston or when the gunman killed those college students. I wish we would have room to not get on CNN and talk about it. I wish we wouldn't be in a hurry to try to analyze it. I wish we wouldn't be in a hurry to try to comment about it. But to realize that people need room. When Freddie Gray was killed in Baltimore, where were the people like Eliphaz and Bildad and Zophar who, instead of calling for calm and quiet, insisted that society mourn with the Gray family and be angry with the Gray family and respect their right to be angry? Because people who experience great trouble and sorrow and suffering are entitled to look like they have had great trouble. They are entitled to sound like they're having great trouble. They're entitled to act like they're having great trouble. We shouldn't trample on their pain with empty words. And when we don't know what to say, know how to say nothing. Know how to, and when you say, I don't have words, there's a reason you don't have words. You need to keep your mouth shut. Because everything you say after I don't have words is worse than your silence. We live in a hurried age. Often people who grieve are not permitted to scream out their anger and their frustration, but they are sedated. We give them medication. We give them tranquilizers. We silence them. We're not doing that for them. We're doing that for us. We don't want to hear them. We don't want to see them. We don't want to be around them. We want them to be numb so we can feel better. It's one thing to sedate somebody to keep them from hurting themselves. It's another thing to sedate somebody because you don't want to be hurt by what they hurt by. Often we don't give people time to mourn, but we expect them to quickly conduct the rituals of burying their dead and then return to regular routines as if their hearts are not broken and if their worlds are not in chaos. Job's story offers a different alternative, a very different alternative. And it shows us that honest respect for the realities of grief requires that we simply admit our helplessness with those who are suffering. What are you saying, preacher? I'm saying that sympathy demands more of us than an attempt to sedate those who suffer. Sympathy does not try to silence suffering people. Sympathy compels us to sit Shiva. Sometimes you just have to sit through stuff. Sometimes you have to sit in it. You can't walk out of it. You can't talk out of it. Sometimes you just have to sit in it. Sympathy demands that we bear their silent tears and our own silent tears. Sympathy demands that we bear the angry cries of those who are angry. Sympathy demands that we bear the statements of woe, even the cursing of woe. Sympathy obligates us to respect the dignity and the morality of people who, like Job, sink so low in despair that they curse their existence and question the very purpose of their lives. And Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar did well to join their suffering friend. They did well to sit Shiva with him. They did well to be silent while Job poured out his pain and cursed his situation. But when Eliphaz opened his mouth, he did something we should avoid repeating. He tried to offer an explanation for Job's suffering by suggesting that Job's suffering was divine punishment. Look at this, Eliphaz chapter 4 in Job, verses 1 through 9. Look at beginning of verse 3, Eliphaz seems kind of sympathetic. You have instructed many. You have strengthened the hands of the weak. Your words have supported those who suffer. Job, you've been somebody who's been sympathetic. You've helped people. And you think Eliphaz will say, I'm here to help you, Job. But then Eliphaz says, now it's come to you, and you now look at how you're talking. Now it's come to you. It's your turn. There is one thing you can learn from that. Those of us who comfort others will sometimes need to be comforted later. Sooner or later, the table will turn. Sooner or later, we will be the one sitting on the front pew in front of the casket. Sooner or later, we'll be the one getting the bad news. Sooner or later, we'll be the one getting the bad diagnosis. We have to realize the situation does turn. And then Eliphaz said at verse 7, think now, who that was innocent ever perished? Or where were the upright cut off? As I have seen, those who plow iniquity and sow trouble reap the same. Now, would you want to hear that if you lost all your wealth and lost all your children and you lost your health? Would you want your good, holy, church-going friend to come there and tell you in your house that those who sow iniquity reap the same? If you hadn't cussed before then, I suggest you'd have been tempted to cuss right about then. Now, you might have religion, and your religion may not let you cuss, but the temptation would rise up in you. And there are those of us, I'm not going to tell you who they are, but there are those of us who say, no, you know what, you can just find the door and let the door hit you. Or leave so fast it doesn't hit you. Fast forward to the New Testament, and we see the disciples of Jesus doing something similar. They encounter in the 9th chapter of John's Gospel a man who has been blind from birth. He was blind from the moment he came into the world, and now he's in manhood. And then they asked Jesus, Rabbi, who sinned? This man or his parents, that he was born blind? If you remember one lesson from the story of Job, remember this. We may never learn the divine cause for the mystery of all suffering. Some suffering is beyond our understanding. The cause of suffering is sometimes more than we can understand. It is tempting to imitate Eliphaz and disciple of Jesus by associating morality with suffering, but it is logically and morally unwise to do so. Why? Let me quote my good mentor, Dr. Gardner Taylor, who often would say, life is an uneven journey. Well, let me remind you of what we read here in the scriptures. Sometimes I'm up. Sometimes I'm down. Sometimes I'm almost level with the ground. There is no guarantee that life will always be up. And there is no guarantee that we will always know, or we will know at any particular time, let alone understand why we are down. Therefore, the honest thing for us to do is to admit that we don't know. Say that with me. I don't know. Say it again. I don't know. One more time. I don't know. Now think of the number of times that statement has been true in your history. Think of the number of times the honest answer in your history experience has been, I don't know. That's true. And the morally honest thing for us to do when we have grief and suffering and sorrow that we don't understand is to admit our frustration, admit our anger, admit our despair, and confess that part of our anger and part of our frustration and part of our despair is that we don't know. Because we want to know. We want to know. And part of what makes our suffering so painful is that we don't know. And that's part of what makes sitting silent so hard. Because it's hard to admit that we don't know. You know, admitting we don't know means we're not God. Admitting that we don't know it means that we are not equal to God. And that's hard for us because we want to be God. And especially we want to be God when we suffer. We want to insist that God explain our suffering to us. Then we want to give God directions on what to do with our suffering. God, fix this. We want to order God, direct God. And if God will not talk to us, and if God will not obey us, then to hell with God. Isn't that what we'll do sometimes? Because you see, part of the reality of our humanity is we are not God. And nothing reminds us that we aren't God as much as suffering. We have the right to be angry when we suffer. We have the right to be frustrated when we suffer. We have the right to cuss a bit when we suffer. And we have the right to be frustrated because we don't know the reason for our suffering. Here's the rub. Not knowing the reason for suffering is reason for us to be silent. For us to say, I don't know about the cause of that suffering. It is not the reason for us to engage in moral guesswork. I don't know is not answered by I guess, and therefore my guess is right. We have no right to suggest that people suffer because they are immoral. It is logically and morally wrong to turn I don't know why bad things happen to you into I suspect bad things are happening to you because you are bad or because you have behaved badly. I don't know means I don't know, not I suspect, I know that you are wrong. And so Jesus provides new insight on this whole suffering issue in his response to the disciples' suggestion concerning the man who was born blind. This man, you understand, had been born with the affliction of blindness. He had been sightless for all his days. He had never seen his parents. He had never seen his other relatives. He had never seen the sun or clouds or trees or birds or dirt or water. He had never seen the food he ate. He'd never seen the clothing he wore. The man born blind had never seen his neighbors. People could hit him and he could not identify them. And Jesus rejected the suggestion that this man had somehow sinned before birth. Think about how wrong that is. Think about how wrong that is. Master, who sinned? Rabbi, who sinned? This man sinned before he was born? These church folk ask this question. The church folks. You understand? These folks have been John's disciples. That's where Jesus got them from, you know. They had been in the church a while, all right? And so don't think the church folks can't ask stupid questions. Master, Rabbi, who sinned? This man before his birth or his parents? Instead, Jesus shifted the conversation about the man's plight from divine cause to divine power, divine presence, and divine purpose. According to Jesus, the answer was neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. Wait. God's works, God's presence, God's power, and God's purpose might be revealed in him. Wait a minute. This is too deep for me. How can the presence of God and the power of God and the purpose of God be revealed in this man's blindness? Perhaps the presence of God can be revealed in the man's blindness by bringing out our compassion. In the man's blindness, does not God call us to be instruments of compassion toward this man? And the presence of God impels us to be people of compassion, should inspire from God some compassion in us. God's presence and God's purpose and God's power are not just revealed in privilege. I know when we get something good, we say, the Lord bless me. When we suffer, we don't say, the Lord bless me. But notice something. Jesus says this man's suffering might be an instrument for God's presence and God's power and God's purpose to be revealed in him. Somehow God might do something through me that God cannot do if I am not going through this. I'm not saying that happens all the time. I'm saying that Jesus reminds us that sometimes we don't understand what God's up to. And it was Jesus who had to explain to them that there are things that God does with us that sometimes we don't feel good about, that sometimes don't look good to other people about, but that God has a bigger, higher purpose about. You understand? We're not God now. And because we don't not God, we don't like thinking that way, but God has a higher purpose. How do we say it? God's ways are not our ways, and our ways are not God's ways. God's presence and God's power and God's purpose are revealed not only in our privilege, but also in our pain. That doesn't mean that God inflicts suffering on us. Jesus is not talking about the cause of the suffering. He's talking about the purpose, that there is a higher purpose than the hurtful cause. In suffering, remember, it was the suffering, Jesus, that prayed, thy will be done. It was suffering that sent Jesus to Gethsemane. It was suffering that caused Jesus to pray, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. It was suffering that caused Jesus to pray that prayer. It was not privilege. It was not pleasure. It was suffering. It was suffering that inspired Charles Wesley to write, Father, I stretch my hand to thee, no other help I know. If thou withdraw thyself from me, whither shall I go? Suffering is what inspired the hymn. Like, living below in this old sinful world, hardly a pleasure can afford. Striving along to bear temptation strong, where could I go but to the Lord? Those are statements of faith. And they acknowledge that suffering people are not abandoned by God even when they cannot see or sense God near. Job's afflictions did not prevent God from being God, and therefore God can be God even in our suffering. God can be God even in our pain. God is God even when we are hurting. God is God even when our world is turned upside down. That blind man's sightlessness did not prevent God from being God. It did not prevent God from being good. It just meant the man was blind. And our afflictions can be windows through which the presence and the power and the purposes of God can be seen in ways that our pleasure or our privilege cannot be seen. What are you saying, preacher? When suffering becomes despair, let's affirm that people deserve the freedom to express their pain. When suffering becomes despair, let's respect their need and their right for us to be silent rather than be noisily present, and even noisily and wholly present. Sometimes we can make holy noise. I tremble when I go to funeral services and the preacher says, y'all don't cry, don't cry. I just tremble. I tremble. I tremble when I walk into a sick room where people are suffering from, and somebody comes in there and, oh, you're going to be okay. Person's gotten a death diagnosis. Situation is unchanged. Diagnosis isn't going to change. They don't need somebody walking there saying, oh, you're going to be okay. The Lord's going to deliver you. You're going to be healed. Used to hear a song when I was growing up. Jesus will never say no. Jesus will never say no. Apparently, they didn't read Job. We need to respect the silence of I don't know. And when suffering becomes despair, let us resist the temptation to blame victims for their plight. Instead, let's practice that Jewish tradition of sitting Shiva. 7 days? Maybe not 7 days. Some of us can't sit quiet for 7 minutes. But practice Shiva. Sit quietly. The old folks would sometimes just do this. They just say, Lord, have mercy. Just hold their hands, and every once in a while somebody would come in and give them a hug, sit down beside them. I will never forget, and I'll close with this, October 21st, 1991 was the day my father died of a heart attack at work. And my father and my mother had been married for 45 years, and so it was a big blow to our family, big blow. I came from Little Rock, and Pat and I dropped the boys off in Melville, my parents' house, my mother-in-law's house, and my father-in-law, and drove to Delight, where home was, and got home, tried to comfort Mama as best we could, tried to comfort ourselves as best we could. At the time, Mama had an older sister, my Aunt Minnie. Aunt Minnie was a colorful character, wonderful soul, God rest her soul. She could turn over 2 or 3 pews when she shouted. You didn't want to get in Aunt Minnie's way when the Spirit hit her. I mean, she would clear a pew. And Aunt Minnie came into the house, and she wasn't driving that much. She had a fellow who was driving for her, and the fellow drove for her, and Aunt Minnie had a big old, one of those old long Lincolns, and because she wasn't walking very well, he drove way up on the yard, you know. So Aunt Minnie wouldn't have to walk very far. She walked into the house and sat down beside Mama, put her hands on Mama's hands, and she said, "Well, Josie, and is gone. God bless him. He was a good man. You're going to miss him. She said, now, well, Josie, now, you pray and you get you a pistol. Aunt Minnie was that kind of way because Aunt Minnie's faith had a pistol packed to it too. But Aunt Minnie would shoot you too. But what we need to do is understand that there's room for praying, there's room for silence, there's room for frustration, there's room for anger, there's room for taking some action on your own, get your pistol, and there's room for admitting that I don't know. And God can handle all of that. We need to learn how to handle that too. Understand that God can handle that if we will leave God to be God and not insist that just because we don't know, God has done us wrong. Amen.